guys, it's Emma and I'm back today for you with another video, and today we are going through all of the books that I read in January. This month I had a strict priority. I wanted to read as many monster romances as I could, okay? Monster romance is like my niche. I love that, okay? And I have a cache built up of just so many monster romances on my audiobook app, and I just have never gotten around to reading them. So I forced myself to read as many of them as I could, and you know, I also have some other books mixed in. So with that being said, before we actually start, I would really appreciate it if you guys would go down to the description box and look at all the links that I have there for you guys pertaining to stuff going on in the world. For example, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in the DRC, what's going on in Myanmar, what's going on in Sudan, what's going on in Tigray, everything of the sort, right? Amongst other stuff, okay? So those links will be down there for you guys to click on, to share, to interact with. And then down in the comment section, let me know whether or not you guys like monster romance, whether you read any of the books that I read this month, whether you like or dislike any of the books that I read this month. The huge, right? So with that being said, let's just get running into it. You know what I need? I need a reboot. I need someone to unscrew my cranium, take my brain out, and then just run it like under some lukewarm water. Shake it dry, and then boom, there you go. Anyway, little insight into what I think about on the daily. But the first book that I read for the month of January was The Half-Orc's Maiden Bride by Dixon. This is in the same series as The King's Spinster Bride by Dixon, which is one of my favorite monster romances. This is about Iolanthe. She's in her 30s. All of her sisters have already been married off. Her dad doesn't really vibe with her that much. And she's basically resigned herself to, you know, she's never gonna get married. Until one day her father's like, okay, no, I've actually got a man for you to marry. Come with me, pack your bags right now, like right now. And she's like, oh my gosh, okay, that's great. They get to her new fiance's castle, and her dad did not tell her about the half-orc part. So it's all about Iolanthe and Angoe, who is her fiance, you know, building a relationship with one another. I gave this 5 stars. If you're gonna read this book, okay, listen to it over an audiobook, because it's dual narrator. We love to see that, okay, especially in a dual POV. And Angoe's voice actor had me turning into Blanche Devereaux every now and then. All right.
All that manliness in one room, in one crowded room, one hot crowded room. Everybody's steamy bodies all pressed up against each other.
I was not fit to walk around in public after reading this book. Okay, it was steamy, it was kind of funny, and it was just really cute to see Iolanthe come into her own and build her self-confidence. And not to mention there's a chase scene, which, oof, girl. And also the Hala and Mathior plugs were a nice touch. I don't know, I just thought this was so much fun. It's really short. If you like a good, steamy, kind of funny monster romance, definitely go for this. This, I think, has cemented my thing of like, okay, maybe I do like orcs. The second book that I read for January is gonna be very short, talking about it. And that is The Children of Red Peak by Craig DiLouie. It's about these kids who survived the mass suicide that their cult underwent, and it's several years later, and one of them has passed away, and so they've all essentially reunited and decide to go back to Red Peak to revisit and hopefully try and heal some bits of themselves. I DNF'd this book, sadly. I DNF'd it at 42%, and I just remember I was irrevocably bored, which is so disappointing because I love cult books. You know what I mean? Like Little Heaven, Last Days, Our Share of Night. I love those books. And I was waiting for Children of Red Peak to be like that, to give me that factor, you know, and just that like really fascinating feel. And there were bits and pieces of, you know, like little teases every now and then, but it was too much teasing and not enough actually happening. I need something to happen, you know what I mean? So I'm still interested in Craig DiLouie's other books that I have on my TBR, but this one was a letdown, unfortunately. This, besides the Half-Orc's Maiden Bride, I think is my next favorite book that I read this month. This is another monster romance. This is Girls' Weekend by C.M. Nascosta. This is about 3 elves who take a little weekend getaway to a nudist colony of orcs for just a really fun weekend. I gave this book 4 stars. This was so much fun, okay? What I love about a lot of monster romances is that they're really short. They get to the point and they get it done. And I love it, all right? We love to see it, especially in this society when attention spans are getting shorter and shorter by the nanosecond. I loved the relationships, especially between Silva and L'Oreal's romances. I loved them. And also I liked the fact that Silva and L'Oreal kind of had like this character growth in their relationship with one another. It was just really, really sweet. However, I don't really quite understand the third elf's point of view. Nothing really happened on her part, which I feel like is unfortunate because I feel like there were seeds planted, you know, to grow and later cultivate. But unfortunately, the sunlight wasn't utilized. There was no watering of any sort. Nothing came of this plant. 'Twas a weed.
To put it bluntly, a weed.
Not to mention the smut scenes in here, A1, okay? Plus a pretty damn good dose of fluff and angst as well. I loved this book so much. It was so fun. It was funny. The premise is hilarious. And I don't know, it was surprisingly very emotional and very intense compared to, you know, what you think you're going into. The next book that I read for January was Red Wolf by Rachel Vincent. This is about Adele, who lives in a village that is day by day being encroached upon by this very malignant forest. This forest is full of monsters, the leaves and the vines are out to get you. You are not safe in this forest. And so Adele learns on her 16th birthday that she is in fact one of a long line of female guardians. And these guardians can shift into werewolves, and they essentially go into the forest and hunt the monsters and take the brunt off of the villagers fighting the monsters as well. Adele's family and the guardians as a whole take out maybe 75-80% of the monsters so that the humans, you know, can take out the 20% that they can handle. With her taking up the mantle of being a guardian, she realizes that she has to make a lot of really tough decisions. I gave this book 3 stars, okay? 3 stars to me is not a bad rating. 3 stars for me is right in the middle. Even though this is a werewolf book, which I love werewolf books, and this is technically a monster romance book. I love monster romance books. And this was enjoyable to read. I think, and this may be controversial to say, but I believe this has signaled either my start of or my growing out of YA. The first part of this book was so entertaining for me. I loved the first part of this book. But unfortunately, the second part kind of went downhill. The main reason why I'm saying that this book is signaling my growing out of YA is because of the decision-making of the main character, which I acknowledge, she's 16. This is young adult, all right? And I kept having to remind myself, you know, she's 16. The main character in here makes horrible decisions every damn time, and it's like, girl, we need a break. You need a break, I need a break, we all need a water break, okay? Because please, I just wish like every single time she made one horrible mistake after the other, I just wish that there had been some sort of growth, or at least more growth from her towards the end of the story, because these are not like just stereotypical teenage decision. No, these are stupid decisions. I really did like the lore and the world building of this book. I liked how fast it was. I just didn't like the ending, but what are you gonna do? The next book that I read for the month of January was On the Prowl by Kate Rudolph. This follows Andre and M. Andre is this werewolf, and he is sent to be M's bodyguard because M is a super famous rock star, and she is being terrorized by the shadow creatures. I gave this book 1 star. Look, I don't know what happened with this book, because for the first half, I was having an amazing time. And then the second half just took a nosedive. I think what pissed me off the most about it was that if you're gonna write a smut book, if you're gonna write, for all intents and purposes, an erotica book, okay, you cannot have smut scenes that are so bland with the blandest descriptions and or smut scenes that last less than a page. all right? That is against the law. I don't make it. I simply abide by it, all right? You might as well have had those scenes fade to black. And then the overarching plot, like the climax of it was just so underwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, it's this dude that's the culprit that just all of a sudden was plopped into this role with no literary evidence throughout the rest of the book. It's just, oh my gosh, all of a sudden this dude is the culprit and we're expected to believe this. It felt like such a cop-out. Like, what? And I wanted to like the characters, but quite frankly, I couldn't care less about any of them. Okay, so this book, even though this book is literally marketed as a werewolf bodyguard romance, which should be right up my damn alley, 'twas not. The next book that I read for the month of January was another one by Ruby Dixon, and this is Beauty in Autumn. All right, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling where essentially there's a beast that lives in the forest, and every year for the Harvest Festival, a girl is picked from one of the villages to go and be his bride. And this year, Willow is picked at the Harvest Festival, and she goes to see the wise woman about it because she's like, I'm terrified. And the wise woman is basically like, yeah, no, you can break the curse that the beast is under. It's just you can't look at him. So Willow's like, okay, well, word. And so she goes to him, and you know, it's basically the Beauty and the Beast thing. I gave this one 4 stars. I had a lot of fun with this. There's a plot. It's mostly just smut, you know what I mean? But there's like a blindfold thing in here, obviously because she can't see the dude. I said it, I think, in my Monster Romance Rex video, but I honestly can't wait to see what else Ruby Dixon puts out in terms of monster romance. It's just not ICA and at Play Arbarian's Bay. The next book that I read for the month of January was a book club book, and that was Frostbite by Angela Sylvaine. This is a book about a meteor crash landing in Demise, North Dakota, and the worms that come out of it have a memory loss inducing bite. And essentially it's up to Raylene and her friend in order to stop the worms from infecting everybody and to save them all. I gave this book 3 stars, okay? This was so much fun to read. It was so action-packed. There's so much shit going on in this book. I really, really like that this book pays homage to pretty much all of the B-list sci-fi, thriller, horror movies that have like become so popular. And I think that's what made this book so much fun. Even though this book has a ton of pop culture references, I think this is one of the rare books that makes it work. However, with that being said, I liked the pop culture references that describe the setting instead of the action. And what I mean by that is every now and then a character, like Raylene, for example, she'd be like gearing to hit somebody with a tire iron, right? And in her inner monologue, she'd be like, so I channeled my inner Sydney from Scream and I swung the tire iron, and it's like, no, there was a line and you pole vaulted over it, you know what I mean? That took me out of the action, you know what I mean? And also, even though I said that I loved how much action there was in here, how fast it was, how fast paced it was, sometimes there seemed to be too much action. For example, there's a cult in this book. And I like cult books, you know what I mean? And I kind of wish that we'd spent more time with the cult. It seemed that at some points, this book filled it with action for the sake of action. This book was so much fun, and quite frankly, it reminded me of like The Thing, but like aged down to like a YA type of thing. It was really fun. The next book that I read, another monster romance, and this was Taken for Granite by Nancey Cummings. This is a monster romance between a gargoyle and a human, and this kind of twists the gargoyle thing to make gargoyles like this alien species that crash landed on Earth a few thousand years ago, and they've essentially disguised themselves as gargoyles from the Gothic architecture. And the gargoyle that we follow, his name is Toss, and he's been imprisoned by this government agency that's been trying to experiment on him, and he gets free one day with the unknowing help of a woman named Juniper, and they essentially have to run from the government together. I give this book 4 stars. I loved following Juniper and Toss. They were so cute. They were really steamy. And even though the plot is kind of ridiculous, you kind of just gotta roll with it. It's just fun. However, the one thing that made me dock off the star was that, you know, every now and then Juniper and Toss would get into the situations where it's like, oh my gosh, no, I have to sacrifice myself.
He's going to sacrifice himself.
The thing that they would offer up to sacrifice would be like one's total freedom, and it's like, why? What? I don't know. It was such a reoccurring thing that it was just kind of strange. And I don't know, there's kind of like a tiny little thing that happens with Toss and his captor where she's like, no, I was actually your friend the whole time. Sure you were, girl. Sure. And I'm the new Queen of England. All right, move aside, Camilla. What? So yeah, I just enjoyed this book. The plot was fun. You just, you know, you gotta stretch your mind and you know you have a good time. I liked Toss and Juniper's relationship. I thought it was really cute from where it grew from. And I don't know, I also really liked the original twist on the Gargoyles thing, making them aliens. The next book that I DNF'd for the month of January was Thin Skin by Jenn Shapland. This is a collection of essays all about the relative word of contamination. The contamination of nuclear weapons being built on native land and the lack of cleanup. The contamination of the environment by various methods, and the just contamination in one's medical history, along with coming to terms with being a queer woman in today's society. I DNF this at 49% on page 143. I was getting some good quotes. If you can see the like tiny little tabs here. I wouldn't be opposed to picking this up again. It's just, unfortunately, a lot of things I fear went over my head, and I don't think I was in the right space to read this as well, but I just remember because of all those things, I think going over my head, I was very bored. The next book that I read for the month of January was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is about a girl named Yahaira who lives in New York, and she is called into her principal's office one day because her father has died in a plane crash. And then in the Dominican Republic, likewise, Camino's father has also died in a plane crash the same day because their dad is the same dude. So it's all about these sisters essentially learning about their dad and the secrets that he kept, including one another from each other, and dealing with grief. I gave this book 3 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I'm finding out that I really enjoy books in verse, okay? And I really enjoyed how chock full of grief this book was and how it was portrayed into moving through and healing from. And while I loved Yahaira and Camino, they were written kind of similarly. Like throughout a good 80% of this book, it's dual POV, so it's both girls' POV separately, and then the last 20% of the book, their POVs are merged into just one, and you kind of have to guess who's talking or whose POV it is, because unfortunately they are written so similarly. And the big gripe that I have with this book is that I wish that there had been more time dedicated to Yahaira and Camino's relationship once they got together. There was so much buildup to them finding out about one another, to them finding out about their families, to them finding about their dad in general, and then, you know, them messaging one another, and then finally, like I said, like maybe the last 20% when their POVs merge, that's when they meet one another. And I don't know, I just wish that there had been as much culmination to equal how much buildup there was. I might be nitpicky with this one, but I wish that there had been more anger towards the dad, you know, for essentially cheating on both wives. Every single time I read a story now or see a movie or watch a TV show that has a storyline of a dude that has more than one wife or has more than one kid by more than one woman, shamelessly, I automatically think of that SVU episode where it's John Stamos and he's like, actually, detective, you only checked in the US. I've been to Europe. I actually have 47 children. I still loved this book. I liked Poet X a little bit more, but I'm really interested to see what else Elizabeth Acevedo is gonna write. The next book that I read for the month of January was Her Name is Night by Yasmin Angoe. This is about Nana Knight, who is an assassin, but her past is very, very dark and filled with trauma. Now, like I said, she's an assassin and has essentially saved her mark to kill somebody else. And it's her dealing with the ramifications of that and the secrets that the mark that she chose had that linked to her past. I gave this 3 stars. I liked it, but not as much as I wish I did. I loved the writing in this book, okay? I flew through this book because of the writing and how fast it was. And I loved Nana. I loved her so much. She was so intriguing to follow, and I just loved it when she just got back at everybody that shit on her. This book is divided into before and after sections. Every chapter is before, after, etc., right? And unfortunately, my gripe, or one of my gripes with this book, is about the after sections. The after sections to me seemed so either rushed or too slow because barely anything happened, at least compared to the before sections. I felt like there was so much more happening in the before sections than there was in the after sections, which just kind of made it kind of jarring. And this leads into my second gripe, the biggest one, which was like the progression of the relationship with Nana and the target that she essentially saves, i.e. the Baxter family. The progression in their relationship is so fast. Either that or I missed the time jump. Because literally one moment Nana is talking to like the daughter about, oh, you shouldn't be walking around alone at night, because you're a young woman, whatever. And then the next moment, the daughter is literally talking to Nana as if she's a mother figure. And I'm like, where did this come from? I think we missed a few chapters. And yet we went from page 134 to 135. I always enjoy a good revenge story. I love revenge stories, and the ending made me tear up. And I did enjoy this book enough to want to get the sequel. However, like I said, I wish I'd liked this book more than I did. The last book that I read for the month of January was Howl for the Gargoyle by Kathryn Moon. This is the second book in the Monster Smash Agency book. This follows Games with the Orc. This is a monster romance between a gargoyle and a werewolf. This follows Hannah and Rafe, and Hannah is dealing with the trauma of being turned into a werewolf. And she's having to deal with, the meat cravings and the unpredictable temper and the really, really heightened libido. And because of that, she's like, no, I can't have relationships with human men because I'm going to hurt them. So she goes to the Monster Smash Agency and is like, hey, I need somebody durable for before the full moon. And they assign her Rafe. And so it's all about them working through her trauma and their relationship as a whole. I gave this 3 stars. I did love Hannah and Rafe. I loved their romance. I thought the smut scenes were really steamy. I liked how she could be herself around him. However, I felt like so much of their relationship was just based around the smut. I don't think they ever once were like, so, what's your favorite color? Some shit like that, I wish that there had been more fluff to balance out the steam, I guess, because unfortunately, there was a smut scene almost every chapter, which isn't bad. It's just, it kind of got a little stale after a while because it's okay, is all they gonna do is have sex? And then plot-wise, this book is flimsy, okay, because there's 3 plots running in this book. There's the main one, which is Rafe's and Hannah's romance, which I already talked about. And then the subplot of Hannah's band losing their tour because she can't control herself. And the subplot of Hannah trying to find out who the hell attacked her. I already talked about the first plot. This first subplot was okay, I guess. And then the second subplot was really interesting and actually raised the stakes a lot, but unfortunately it happened 25 pages from the end. You know what I mean? Unfortunately it came in too late to really do anything, which I think is such a shame. The dialogue too was just cringy sometimes, all right? I would be content if I died and never ever heard the phrase, I caught big feels ever again. I really did like Rafe and Hannah. I liked their romance, but this was kind of a letdown just in regards to Games with the Orc. So you guys, those were all the books that I read during the month of January. I hope that you've enjoyed. I hope that we all have a better reading month in February. And I hope that we can all read books that we really, really like, and we don't have disappointments in our niche genres, aka werewolf bodyguard romances. I hope to never experience that heartache ever again. But with that being said, you guys, I hope that you've enjoyed. I hope that you will continue to look out for more stuff on my channel. I hope that you guys are staying safe, and I hope that you guys have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.